Hello and welcome to the 7th week of our course on Frank Lloyd Wright by Professor John Lobel at Open Online Academy. My name is Ivan Shumkov, founder of the Academy. And this week we are speaking about the importance of Frank Lloyd Wright for the 20th century. We saw in the previous weeks how important he was because of his architecture, but other than designing beautiful buildings, he really managed to engage on a deeper levels with the culture of his century and to influence so many other fields. So, John, how did he do that?
Well, let's begin with William Morris. So, William Morris is a mid to late 19th century figure. And Morris is an originator of what's called the arts and crafts movement. And he was a socialist, social critic, artist and textile designer, and writer and designer of books, beautiful books. And William Morris saw the ugliness and destructiveness of industrialization. So we have factories that were hells to work in, belching out black smoke, and said, if you had you worked in a factory, you're making a chair, and all you do all day is screw on the left leg of all these chairs. Wouldn't it be better if we went back to the medieval guild system in arts and crafts where the craftsperson makes the entire chair? And so he instituted that in 19th century England and made beautiful chairs that only very rich people could afford. So if you made one chair a month and you need $2,000 a month to live on, you'd have to sell that chair for at least $2,000.
Sure.
Whereas if you participated in a factory making 1,000 chairs a month, the chair could be sold cheaply and you could still make a good living. So the fundamental underlying principle that he advocated just didn't work. But beyond that, Frank Lloyd Wright in 1901 wrote a seminal, very important essay called The Art and Craft of the Machine. And in it he said that William Morris was wonderful, but he got it wrong. And here's what Wright said. If you oppose art to the machine, and the machine means the entire industrial culture, which is going to win? Obviously the machine. And creativity is often just turning something on its head. And so what Wright says is the machine is the art form of the 20th century. It's not the enemy, it's what we're looking for. And so in effect he said, look, the Greeks used the cutting edge material of their day, casting in bronze and carving marble, to make their art. We shouldn't use Greek cutting edge materials, we should use our cutting edge materials. And so here we see the Eiffel Tower.
Right?
Right, or in this case iron, but iron and steel in Eiffel Tower. So Wright uses the cutting edge material of his day. Now he was not too excited about steel. He'd use steel beams occasionally buried in his buildings, but he was very enamored of concrete. And so early on, one of his first buildings of major importance is Unity Temple. That's poured in place concrete. And then one of his last buildings, finished just after he died, is the Guggenheim Museum, also poured in place concrete. So these are things that the Greeks couldn't do, that we could do by engaging the materials of our time. Now at the same time, he pioneered abstract art. So here is a Mondrian painting from 1939-43. Here we have 30 years earlier, Wright's Unity Temple. We look up at the ceiling and there's the stained glass. It's exact pattern, kind of pattern that Mondrian is using. So Wright is seeing these materials as giving us a new kind of aesthetic, a machine aesthetic, and it then gets picked up by the European modern architects. So our question for our students for this lecture is, how important was Wright to abstract art? So the Europeans developed this abstract art. Was Wright a fundamental influence on that, or did they do it on their own? The Europeans might have their own argument, but something we can think about.
So I was wondering, speaking about abstract art, where do you think he got it? Was it from the Froebel cubes or geometries that he was working with? Was it from his passion for Japanese art? And we know that in Japanese art and architecture, there's a lot of abstraction is really important element. So do you think it's from any of those, or he had another source of inspiration?
Well, something we have not had time to get into in this course, but sort of paralleling Wright around the same time as his early work is Green and Green's houses, particularly the Gamble House in Pasadena, California. Now, so our students go to Google Image and look that up, and you see the most beautiful handcrafted wood. And so these giant beams and wood panels, and the beams are all rounded and pegged together in this beautiful handcrafted fashion. Now around the same time, Wright is doing his own house in Oak Park. And we see here the wood, it's obviously gone through a saw. It's gone through a giant mill that's made crisp rectilinear cuts, not handcrafted carved cuts. And so Wright is saying this is the aesthetic of the machine. This is what machines bring you. They don't bring you handcrafted curves, they bring you rectilinear forms. And so I think that's the primary influence of this, or source of this aesthetic, that it's coming from the nature of the technology of the day.
And we saw a lot of that in his projects in the past week. So
Right.
Yes, we can find the demonstration, how it evolves, where it starts and how it evolves throughout his work.
Right.
Thank you.
So next we're going to look at the loss of a privileged point of view and a world of stability dissolving into one of change, another key 20th century phenomena that Wright is at the center of.
Excellent.